Good afternoon. I am Lori McFerrin with the ALS Association. I'm happy to welcome you to this month's Care Services webinar. For those of you who join us regularly, you may note that mine is a new voice. Cynthia Kanaki has facilitated these educational webinars for several years. Cynthia has provided me with this opportunity as she tackles new ways to support the ALS community. I have only a few comments before we start. This webinar is being recorded for future viewing. Both the recorded webinar and the slide deck will be available on our website within a few days. I'd like to highlight that the Q&A and the chat features are available on your screen. Today's presenter enjoys active participation, so please submit your questions and comments in either spot, and she'll address them throughout her presentation. I also have one simple request. Please stay with us after the presentation to complete a 3-question survey at the end. We'd like your feedback on today's presentation, as well as your ideas for future webinars. The survey is anonymous, so if you have a follow-up question and would like a response, be sure to include your email address. Now to introduce our presenter. If you read Porter's bio, you know that she's a professional organizer and motivator. Porter drew on her professional experiences to help her when caring for her husband who had ALS. Today, in the time we have her, Porter will share some of those with us. I'm incredibly grateful to have Porter Knight with us today. Porter, feel free to share your screen and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very happy to have all of you on the call. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Great. So, Lori, you want to make sure you give me a thumbs up so I know that you can all see my screen, and we should be good with that. I'm glad to have so many of you on the call today, and great. And my topic, as Lori said, is coping with caregiving. And, you know, when we first talked about this, she was talking about, you know, self-care and that type of thing. And I wanted to make sure it's clear that, you know, what I do professionally is teach the neuroscience of decision-making. And so there are all different ways to take care of yourself during the challenges of caregiving. We're not going to talk about finding quiet time for yourself, about getting a massage, about, you know, reflective reading and those types of things. What I really want to do today is talk about specific skills that you can take, simple skills that you can apply that can help you navigate the challenges of this difficult time. So to that end, this is essentially our agenda. So I'm going to talk about reclaiming your brain and give you some skills there. I'm going to talk about the impact of sorrow, anger, and fatigue and give you some skills there. I'm going to talk about the challenge of there just being so much to do and some skills there, and talk about prioritizing the basics. So my hope when I talk to any group is that, you know, even if I say a bunch of different things in the course of the hour, I hope that each of you will take away at least one idea, at least one concept, one new skill that you can put in your pocket and say, this is going to help me with tomorrow. So listen as we go for that one thing that's going to be of help to you. And by sharing this agenda ahead of time and letting you see sort of where we're headed, you might be looking at this already and thinking, yes, for me, the challenge is really dealing with the overwhelm of so many things. Or someone else might be thinking, for me, the challenge is coping with the feelings of fatigue and sorrow. So look for what's going to be helpful to you. And I will be asking you as we go through, you know, who has thoughts, questions, ahas. So as we move from each section to the next, I'll say that, and you can use the chat box if you choose to share with me what you've learned, what you're going to do, what your big aha was. In the chat box, you can reply to everyone if you're comfortable, or you can change on that little blue tab, you can change it just to the host and panelists. So not all of the people on the call will see your comments. but we will still see them. So you can decide how you want to share there. But I'll be looking, I have the chat open here on my screen, so I can look at that as we go along. And so if you have questions at any point, feel free to put them there and I'll try to work them in to the presentation as we go. So I wanted to let you know that I was in your shoes not too long ago. And these are actually my feet, and that is actually me in public. So yeah, I went to a local shop wearing 2 different shoes. That's what happens when you've got a lot going on. So I'm not going to ask for a show of hands who's been there, walked out of the house wearing 2 different shoes. It could happen to anybody. But when you're dealing with the challenge of caring for a loved one, and your mind is pulled in so many different directions, this is the type of thing that can happen. And I've been there. So the first thing that I want to do is share with you some strategies to help you reclaim your brain, to try to, keep yourself, as I say, in your skin, keep your brain in your head so that you can try to focus and make decisions as you go through each day. And so the skills that I talk about in this vein are mindful moments and more. So first I want to talk about mindful moments. When I talk about mindful moments, I'm looking for anything that happens during the day that is an opportunity for you to sort of get back in your skin. And I say that because there's a lot of things that happen during the day that make us kind of go, oh. And what I want you to do is think about what in your day makes you go, oh. And let's turn that around and use that as a way to go, ah. So the first mindful moment that I'm introducing is the idea of this little circle. I call this the Microsoft Wheel of Meditation, otherwise known as the buffering symbol. This happens to us at different phases. Could be when you're at your desk, could be when you're with your loved one trying to help them stream something. And all of a sudden the technology goes, I need a minute. And you get that symbol that goes around and around. Usually that happens when you're trying to get something done, and it's incredibly frustrating because you're trying to get something done and then the technology is like, hey, take a break. And so I call it the Microsoft Wheel of Meditation, and I introduce it as an opportunity to, when you run up against something like technology that says, hey, take a minute, that you actually say, hey, let me take a minute. And so if you're looking at that buffering symbol going around and around on your screen, you can take a breath. Oh, it's still going. Take another breath. Usually what happens when the technology throws the wrench in and tries to get us to take a break, we get frustrated, we start tapping the button faster, we think, okay, I'll get 3 other things done while I wait for this to happen, so we sort of try to pack more in. This is an opportunity to say, hey, when this happens, I'm going to just take a breath. So it's a mindfulness moment. It's not a big thing. It's not a giant event. It's not something that you necessarily plan. It's just reframing a situation, particularly reframing an occurrence that happens sometimes. Some things might happen more often than others, but the idea is that whatever it is that is a frustration for you that makes you go, oh, look for it as an opportunity to go, ah. Another example of that is a stop sign or a stoplight. So, when we're trying to get a bunch of things done while we've got somebody at home and we're trying to hurry, and then we're like, oh, that light. And what usually happens in that moment is we start running through a bunch of other things in our head. Again, we're like galloping ahead, trying to figure things out. But you can use that as an opportunity to just take a breath. Or if it's a stoplight, take a couple breaths. When my older son was in driver's ed at age 16, the driver's ed teacher said to them, a bunch of teenage boys in the car, they're all doing the driver's training together. And he said, when you get to a stop sign, a full stop, which is the one that you don't get a ticket for, as opposed to the rolling stop, which you will. A full stop is one where the car rocks back and you take a whole breath in and a whole breath out. And then you look both ways and proceed. And I thought, what a brilliant thing to teach young people. It's a great opportunity for all of us to look for things that will allow us to slow down and take a breath. So I've just given you 2 examples of things that make some people go, I'm curious if anybody wants to throw into the chat things that you can think of that would be this type of trigger for you, and whether that might be something you could use tomorrow as an opportunity for a mindfulness moment. So you don't have to put it in the chat, but I'm gonna give it a moment in case people do. Even if you don't want to put it in the chat, just think for a minute. We have, 56 people on the call, so there should be 56 odd thoughts out there for like, oh, you know what makes me go during the day? This. And by identifying it today, when it happens tomorrow, you'll be more likely to have the capacity or the wherewithal to reframe it and take a breath. Okay, so a couple of things are coming in. One person says traffic, family can be a stressor, and things that make us go I'll give it another minute in case other people want to weigh in there. So I want to make a distinction. Work-related stressors. I want to make a distinction between mindful moments. Looks like people are finding the chat button now, which is great. Yeah. Unexpected things or sudden appointments, right? I want to make a distinction between mindful moments, which are just taking things that happen normally during the day that can be an irritant, and using that as an opportunity to just take a breath and let yourself settle back into your skin and be more centered, be where you are. And a full-on practice of meditation. So if we think of mindfulness, sort of like a giant circle. So mindfulness is a collection of practices that are scenarios where you notice something without judgment, or you pay attention to something without attachment. So those are all different ways to be mindful. And you can have mindful moments like I'm talking about here, where you take a potential irritant and reframe it as an opportunity to just settle into yourself. But you can also, you can walk mindfully, you can drive mindfully, you can eat mindfully, you can enjoy your cup of tea or coffee mindfully. So there's lots of different ways to be mindful. Meditation is a subset of that. So meditation is certainly a mindfulness practice, but it's a more specific mindfulness practice. So when I talk about meditation, I'm not talking about it to relax you. It can be very relaxing, and for many people, it's a practice that helps lower blood pressure, and help them be more fully present. But when I talk about meditation, I do it from the perspective of focus and performance. So my job is workplace productivity and office organizing. I teach people how to be more focused, be more attentive, be more productive in the workplace. Meditation is a fundamental piece of that. And I feel like my meditation practice is critical to what allowed me to navigate caring for my husband and still be the happiest person I know. So despite all of the other things that were going on, I was able to be there and do what needed to be done and still feel full of joy. And I think that is because of meditation. So I want to talk to you about what meditation is, why it works physiologically. So this isn't a spiritual conversation. I talk about meditation as weightlifting for the brain. So if you had a job where you had to lift heavy things, then you might go to the gym and work out so that you would be strong. And then at work, when you faced a heavy thing, you'd be like, I got this, I'm ready, right? It wasn't like you would at work, when you see a heavy thing, be like, oh, hang on, I'm going to the gym, right? So you would work out at the gym so that when you faced the heavy object, you were prepared. Meditation is similar. So meditation prepares our brain to focus as we wish. And the way that that works is that when you meditate, and just to normalize what I'm talking about here, meditation is just practice paying attention. That's all it is. It's practice paying attention. So if you practice doing something, you get better at it. If you practice paying attention, then you can get better at paying attention. And what that looks like physiologically is additional gray matter in the brain. So if we put you into a diffusion MRI and we take a picture of your brain and we see the gray matter in different parts of the brain, particularly we're interested in gray matter around the anterior cingulate, which is a part of the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for attending or focusing. And then you meditate every day for a month. We put you back into the diffusion MRI and we take a picture of your brain, we'll see additional gray matter. So like going to the gym, working out can make your muscles stronger so you can lift that box. Meditation, consistent practice at paying attention, will make you better at paying attention, which also is better at resisting distraction. That's super useful when you have a lot of things going on and you need to say, hey, brain, go here, focus on this. A lot of things going on, pulling your distraction in different directions, and you can say, no, this. But there's another piece from a performance standpoint, which is even more valuable, I think, for those of us going through challenging times with our family and caring for people we love. So that is that the practice of paying attention necessarily requires that all of the times you get distracted, you just notice, oh, well, got distracted, and you bring the brain back to pay attention. And then you get distracted again. Oh, no, there it is, got distracted, come on back. Every time you get distracted, which could be 100 times or 100,000 times in a short meditation, you just say, hey, brain, come on back. Hey, brain, come on back. At no point after 100 or 100,000 times do you start beating yourself up, saying, see, I'm just not that kind of person. I knew I was going to be no good at this. I'm never good at any of these things. I don't know why this is happening. Like, none of that. It's just notice and redirect. Notice and redirect. Notice, redirect, notice, redirect. That skill, and that's what it is, a skill to notice and redirect without tantrum, without drama, without editorializing, without subjective language, without personal criticism. Just notice, redirect, notice, redirect. This is incredibly valuable. When you're going through a challenging time, you're doing physically demanding work, mentally exhausting, emotionally tiring work, to be able to notice and choose, notice and direct your attention is very, very powerful. And practicing leaving all of that subjectivity aside so that you're not having all of that editorializing, that narration in your brain about this isn't fair, it shouldn't be this way, I can't believe how hard this is, how am I going to do it, I don't know if I can, all that stuff. Just notice, redirect, notice, redirect. So the value of meditation is both in its building your capacity to focus, literally measurably changing your brain's muscle, if you will, for paying attention to what you choose to attend to, and also creating this sense of serenity or this capacity for peace and choice in the moment, where you notice something and choose where you want to go with that. So when I talk about meditation, I teach what I call a simple, silent, secular sit. I'll include a handout when I send the slides, so you can access that. But the idea is basically that you decide, I'm going to do this. I'm going to practice meditating. You decide how long. I usually say, give it a minute. This does not have to be a big hour. I know you have a lot of demands on your time. 1 minute every day is a great practice. If you can dial it up to 3 minutes or 5, awesome. I think that you'll find the benefits will encourage you to dial it up a little bit, but don't feel overly ambitious with this. You have a lot to do. 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 is great. A consistent practice where you notice without judgment, you pay attention without attachment. So you say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for a minute. And then you make your spine essentially tall. So you could be standing up like I am here, or sitting in a chair, or lying down, although you might fall asleep. So sitting and standing is probably safer. You set your timer for a minute and you pay attention to something. What do you pay attention to? Doesn't even matter. You can pay attention to the sound of the heater. You can pay attention to a spot on the floor. You can pay attention to the breath going in or out. The point is to choose something that you're going to pay attention to until you notice that you weren't anymore. And then you come back to that thing you were paying attention to for the time frame. And when the time frame's over, yeah, you practiced. Over a period of weeks, you'll see a real difference in your non-reactivity. It's a huge benefit. Thoughts, questions, ahas about this skill of introducing mindful moments or a simple meditation practice to help you reclaim your brain and have agency over where your brain pays attention during the course of the day. I'm going to look to the chat to see if anybody puts anything there. So again, I'm looking for any sort of like, oh, yes, I can do this. This is going to be something that I'm going to take away and try. Or what about, I have a question about this. I'm not sure. It's tempting as a presenter to just keep talking, but I know it takes a minute to find your keyboard and type a couple of things out. So I'll give it another minute. Who got a takeaway here? Who is going to embrace a mindful moment or a practice of meditation? Couple votes for I'm going to give it a try. Yep. Somebody says it's a holiday resolution. Somebody else says I'm going to practice both. All right. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, somebody says, I always think of meditating as lengthy, but yeah, I could do that. I could do 1, 3, or maybe 5 minutes. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. The next topic I want to talk to you about is sorrow, anger, and fatigue. I don't know if anyone has heard this comment. There's a saying that says, I sat with anger long enough, and she told me her real name was grief. I found that quote to be really, really powerful when I was caring for my husband. And, you know, I think that it can be really devastating when you feel any type of anger about this process or this experience. And there can be feelings of guilt associated with that. But I wanted to share with you, and I'm putting it in the chat. There was an article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago about this. And it was really putting out there with data how normal it is to not just experience, you know, the feeling of loss, but you know, sorrow, anger, and fatigue. They're very, very normal parts of the process. And I think that for me, normalizing anger is recognizing that it's just a different face of sorrow. The practice of mindfulness and meditation can help you experience these, because when you have developed the skill, that mental muscle that lets you focus your attention to notice and redirect your attention, when you have feelings, you can notice the feelings as the information that they are. And so one of the phrases I like to use is that, you know, we want those feelings. Feelings should never be denied or suppressed because they're data, they're good information, but you want to feel the feeling. You don't want to be the feeling. So the feeling doesn't have to dictate your behavior or to define your personality or to define yourself. We have feelings because we're human, and that's normal and natural. And when we have those feelings, if we've developed that mental wherewithal to notice, we can say, wow, that's so interesting. I'm feeling very fill in the blank. You can notice and name the feeling, validate that that's a legitimate feeling to have, without having, you know, more feelings about the feelings, like feeling bad about having them. You can just be like, that's really interesting. There's that feeling. And then you can reclaim your agency and say, what do I want to do? And so I want to talk about those as as the strategies. Somebody's sharing in the chat, they can't access the link to that Times article without a subscription. You know what I can do is, I think that I can probably print a PDF of that and include that when I send it to Lori. Lori, I'll check and see if that's possible. I think that that would be fine. So the skills that I want to offer to deal with sorrow, anger, and fatigue are these. First, acceptance of it, agency around it, and then action. When I talk about acceptance, I'm talking about neutral observation of what is, specifically of what is right now. Again, the meditation will have prepared you for this so that you can notice and just be right here, right now. This is what is. We're not talking about what we're afraid is going to happen, what might happen someday, maybe could. We're not talking about what already happened. We're not talking about what we wish were happening or what we wish weren't happening. All we're doing is saying, this is what is. And so radical acceptance of what is really valuable because just like feelings give you information, radical acceptance of what is gives you the best data. It doesn't mean that you can't change things. In fact, having the good data makes you more capable of making real change, right? If you have the realistic information about what is, then you can do something with that. Whereas if you are instead having sort of like wishful thinking about the way things ought to be or should have been, or in a perfect world they might have been, then you don't have good information. So radical acceptance of what is just saying like, this is the situation right now. And I say what currently is because, don't blink, it'll be different. And that's certainly the case when you're caring with someone with ALS. Everybody's journey is different, but there's ebbs and flows, and there's challenges and plateaus. And so whatever is right now won't be exactly what is tomorrow. And it's not what was yesterday. And so just be here now and accept what is. After you've accepted what is, I want you to embrace your agency. And by that, I mean, try to get away from I can't and look for what you can do. There's always something that you can do. And your brain wants you to be the boss. It wants you to be in charge. Our brains really, really resist when it perceives us as being out of control. So your brain always wants you to be the agent of your own actions. So when you say, I can, and specifically agency over action, which is the third step, I can, and then fill in the blank with what you can do. So what you can do might not be something grand, but there's always something little that you can do. And recognizing this is not just about feeling better, although it will make you feel better, and I can explain why, but it will help you perform better. So again, to my work, when I started my business in 1996, I said, just trust me. If you get organized, you're going to think better, you're going to perform better, you're going to feel better. And in 1996, I didn't know why it worked, but it did, which is a wonderful thing. And here we are all these years later. But around 2000, 2001 or two, the field of neuroscience started publishing all of this new research about what happens in the brain in different decision-making scenarios. And so now you don't have to trust me. Now I can tell you exactly why when you get organized, you think, perform, and feel better. And it has to do with decision-making, specifically what I call binary decision-making, which is I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that. Or in other organizing speak, I'm going to keep this, I'm not going to keep that. When you make decisions in that binary fashion, it drives blood to the prefrontal cortex. So that's driving blood to this part of the brain. It's the part of the brain called, or the seat of executive function. It's where we do everything we think of as thinking. All that conscious thinking is happening up front. And when blood goes to the front of the brain, it's bringing nutrients and oxygen so that we can actually think and perform more effectively. So when you are decisive in your actions, what you are going to do, that drives blood to the thinking part of the brain so you think and perform better. But here's a huge benefit as well. When blood moves to the front of the brain through articulation of action, it produces neurotransmitters. So your body is triggered to produce dopamine and serotonin. I don't know if you've heard of those neurotransmitters, but those are the chemicals associated with a sense of satisfaction and competence and well-being. You've had this experience, I'm sure you have, if you've ever cleaned out your sock drawer. If you've ever cleaned out the sock drawer, or even bigger, the garage or the basement, and you're like, I feel great, right? People often associate that great feeling with having got rid of the clutter, but really it's just about dopamine. When you make decisions in that way, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to keep this, I'm not going to keep that, you think and perform better because the blood's in the thinking, performing part of the brain, and you feel better because you've produced positive neurotransmitters. What does this have to do with caregiving? If during the course of your day, whether things are going as you'd hoped during the course of the day or not during the course of the day, if you consciously, consistently bring yourself to what is, not what you wish it were, what you thought it would be, what it should have been, but what is. So you're staying really centered and grounded in the reality and the facts of the current situation. And you embrace your agency. What can I do? And then you name action. What I can do, fill in the blank. I can read to him. I can call a friend to read to him. I can call a friend to talk to myself. I can go out the back door and just take one deep breath and come back in. What can you do? There's always something that you can do. And as soon as you start to name what you can do, you'll start to feel better. There's a phenomenon I call ladder out of the limbic system, right? So this is the prefrontal cortex. It's the part of the brain where you do all your thinking. But the limbic system is where the blood goes when your brain thinks it's under threat. So the limbic system is an older part of the brain. It's at the top of the brain stem towards the back. And it's the part of the brain associated with memory and emotion. That's where we go when we're having a really, really bad day, right? So when you are just, you can't even think, you're so overwhelmed, you're very stressed, you're extremely tired, you're working from the limbic system. And the way to get out of the limbic system back to the prefrontal cortex is to name an action and then name the next action and next action. I call that ladder out of the limbic system, is that when you're feeling absolutely overwhelmed, completely buried, stressed out, if you name one thing you can do and you take action, and then you name one thing you can do and take action, even if they're tiny things, each action that you take is pulling the blood back up to the front of the brain. And with consistent steps and action, you will start to feel better because of the dopamine, and you'll start to think and perform better because the blood's in the thinking part of the brain. So this is not just conceptual, this is physiological. And these are very simple steps that you can apply anytime in any situation. And if you practice them, then they'll become more habitual. And eventually this will be your standard operating procedure. And people will say things to you like, wow, you handle this so calmly and with such good cheer. How do you do that? And you're going to say, well, radical acceptance, agency, action. Thoughts, questions, ahas. What does this make you think? What can you do? How can you use this? What does this explain for you? What questions do you have for me about it? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Oh, here we go. Okay. We have one. This is fantastic. Okay, well, by that, I'm hoping that you mean I can do this. This is something I can actually do. I'm wondering about the other 56 of you. If we're not hearing you say that you can use it, does that mean you can't? Here's a comment says, yeah, sometimes I feel this way at night and all I want to do is just go to bed and read. Yeah, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes just going to bed and reading is good, but you may find that doing something that's more action oriented or action towards goal will be a bigger producer of dopamine and a bigger driver of blood to the prefrontal cortex. So one of the things that's important to note, as I say, that the answer is always action, and action towards goal can be much more satisfying than action towards escape or action towards relaxation. There's an irony that in our Western culture that people think that we need to do these things to relax. And the things that we do to relax are normally escapist, and they don't add value to our life and make us feel better. Although I would argue that reading definitely adds value, and I'm a big fan and supporter of that. But I just want to make a distinction between action towards goal and a relaxation. So at the end of the night, if you have some time for yourself to read, that's a beautiful way to unwind, and that's a great strategy for relaxation. But when you're trying to ladder out of the limbic system, you may find that you feel more satisfied in the end if the action that you take is something that's moving you towards an outcome or a goal you're trying to achieve. So maybe it is, I'll just put away 5 clean dishes. Or if there are no clean dishes, I'll wash 5 dirty dishes. So keeping it very manageable, but tangible and specific, but it's action towards an outcome you're trying to achieve. It's not an action just to escape or to relax. Yeah, another comment is saying that this is helpful and sort of validating for this person who says, I kind of function like this. I make lists, prioritize my tasks, and think it out throughout the day. And that really does help me. Yeah, and someone else is saying that the I can thought process helps a lot. Super. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I want to talk about the challenge of just having so much to manage, so much to do, and so much to do. And it's not just like in our normal busy lives where we have so much to do, which inevitably is true, but so much to do when this person we love really depends on it. And these things are crucial to get through the day physically and safely. So the first thing that I want to do is, I know it's a little bit like juggling fire, but when we use the analogy of juggling, I think that sometimes people forget that all that juggling is doing one thing quickly in a practiced pattern. So juggling is not doing many things at once. Juggling is doing one thing at a time, but quickly in a practiced pattern. That's why it's really hard to juggle when we're caring for somebody with ALS, because ALS is different all the time, and our loved ones' needs are changing day to day. And so as soon as you figure out that practiced pattern of juggling 4 pins of fire, now there's 5 pins. Don't get used to that, because that will change too. And now it's not 5 pins of fire, now it's 5 swords, right? So it's constantly evolving and changing. So recognize that if we want to have this, fluid capacity of doing something, we need to know what to expect, and we need to practice it. And that's not always possible when you're caring for a loved one with an illness like this. So let's take the juggling analogy away, and let's just talk about what are the strategies that we can do, what skills can we put in place in order to cope with all of the things that we have to do. The first thing that I want to offer to you is my professional gift called Lower the Bar. And you can do this right now, just like reach up as high as you can and grab that bar and bring it down. So if what we need to do is get over all of the hurdles, let's not make them super high. When I talk in a professional setting about lower the bar, I don't mean, do something that's dangerous or unethical or unkind. What I mean is, let's not be fussy. Right? So I am a certified professional organizer, and I am absolutely not a perfectionist, not a control freak, not compulsive. And those things will really, really hamper you when you're dealing with a lot of demand in an emotionally stressful time with an unpredictable day-to-day scenario. So lower the bar means just do what needs to get done. Be clear about the outcome you're trying to achieve, and keep the task as simple as it can possibly be to get where you need to be. Cut yourself some slack, cut your family and your friends and your loved ones some slack. Things don't have to be the way they always have been. There's no perfect required. What we need is kindness, and we need to get through the day and meet the outcomes or the needs that need to be met. So lower the bar, make things simple. And the more things that you allow to be easy, the more energy you'll have for the things that need more attention to detail and require you to be a little bit more thorough. So the first one is lower the bar. The second one is accept help. I remember actually before my husband's diagnosis, I had a cancer diagnosis, and my oncologist said to me, Porter, the answer is yes. And I said, what? And she said, people are going to ask if they can help. And the answer is always yes. Even if you don't know what the help that you need is, say, yes, thank you so much for offering. I'm not sure what I need right now. What could you do? What thoughts do you have? Or let me write your name and number down and I'll get back to you with a list of things and you can choose what feels like a good fit for you. So the answer is always yes, accept help for yourself, also for your loved one. The more people who are participating in their care, the broader that circle of love is. They see you accepting help and it makes them feel better because they're worried about how much you're taking on. And so when they see you accepting help, they feel better for you and they feel better for them because they see these people who care about them and care about you stepping up, and that feels wonderful. Also, the person who's offered to help feels good. They do care about you and your loved one. They want to participate, but they don't know what to do. And so give them a task, give them an opportunity, give them a role to play. Everybody will benefit from that. Lower the bar, accept help, and then make an action list. So one person alluded to this in the chat, and it's absolutely true that an action list will help you navigate the day. Try to keep it realistic. Don't make it overly large, but get it out of your head and onto paper and use a verb. So on the paper, write the verb, what you're going to do. That frees up your working memory by not carrying it in your head. It produces dopamine by pinpointing that action verb and capturing on the list. So you're like, okay, safe, I've got that. And then you have it there to check it off as you go along so that you don't lose track halfway through. That list then can also be a tool you can use to delegate. If you're very clear on your list of what actions need to happen and somebody offers to help, you can look at your list and you can say, you know what I need? I need someone to rake the leaves. Thank you. Is that something you could do? You know what I need is I need somebody to drop off the library books. Thank you. Is that something you could do? So keep that action list by verb, and then not only does it help you, but it helps you delegate to others. I see some things that have come in the chat, so I'm going to peek there. But you can write there if there's any thoughts, questions, or ahas you have on this, or if one of these is your takeaway skill, I'd love to hear it. So somebody's asking about sleep. Yes, we're going to talk about that in a minute. So one question somebody said, what about how to take action when I have to do things I really can't do? That's an excellent question. One of the ways that I talk about that in my work with clients is if you need to achieve an outcome, but you don't know how to get there, or you don't have the skills, the resources, the tools, the materials that you need, then what goes on your list is not achieve this outcome, it's get help. And so the question would be, who do I call? Who can I reach out to? Who can I even talk to that might help me figure out how to figure this out? So kind of like laddering out of the limbic system is identify one small thing. When you have an outcome you need to achieve and you're like, I don't even know how, or I simply physically cannot do that. Rather than carry that along in your brain or on your list like a ball and chain, just dogging you the whole time and not getting done, look at it and say, well, what can I do? And find one little thing that you can do, whether that's reach out to, your local ALS team. So try to find something that you can do that's going to help start walking you towards getting that action or that outcome achieved. Yes, somebody's commenting that having a baseline routine schedule is a big help to her. That's absolutely true. And I think that the main thing with that is to be gentle with yourself and allow flexibility when things change or the day rocks so that you aren't able to do even the baseline routine. So just allowing that to be okay on the days when, you have to take shortcuts or do something different. And then these other ones are to everybody, accepting help. Yeah, yes, I do need help. I'm not sure. Yeah, Jamie, definitely you just be really honest and upfront about that. What do you think you could help with? Or maybe we can talk together about possibilities. Maybe I can share with you some of the things I'm doing and you can tell me if any of them are ones that you feel like you might be able to step into. And What if I know I need help, but when I ask, there is no help? Oh, Lohanda, that's such a hard one. I don't have an answer to that necessarily, but my first thought would be to talk to your local ALS team and see if they can help you brainstorm other resources, or if you have a local caregiving group that you can meet with, ask them who they've accessed and how they found them. And keep looking. How broadly can you go? Are there scout troops? Is there a National Honor Society? Is there a local nursing school? Where might there be people with volunteers? We found help in some unlikely corners. Our American Legion had a shed of tools of medical supplies that could be loaned or borrowed. And when we reached out to them, they as a group then said, what do you need? Like in terms of other supports and services, which we had never even expected. So I would say, don't be discouraged when you look and there is nothing. Keep looking for another something. Because the act of looking in itself is an action that you can take. So the act of looking is beneficial to you as the looker, even if you don't get the answer solved. But eventually, that will hopefully lead to a solution. So Nikki's offering, and this is to everybody, as someone who assists caregivers, I struggle to help those say that they need help. They're private people. They don't like letting people into their lives. Any thoughts on this? One of the things I say as a professional organizer is, if you think you're organized and you don't need help, then you're perfect and you don't need my help. And so, I would, on the one hand, if people feel like this is something that they want to do as a private family and they don't want others to come in and help, to allow that to be their choice. But I would say to them, many people find that at this point, or along the journey, that they really valued and benefited from getting help. I'd like to offer you these resources or support these helps so that you can consider it should the time come for you. So they don't feel like they're being judged for not accepting help. And if they are feeling like they have their needs met within the family and that private unit, and that feels the best and safest to them, then so be it. But you also simultaneously plant the seed and normalize that help is common, that there are services and supports out here, that many families who've walked this path have benefited, and that if they choose to, here's how they can reach out. So I wouldn't stop offering and making it available to them. But if they decide they want to go on their own, then, everybody takes their own path. Oh yeah, the paperwork and the phone tag, it is exhausting. And when you really just want to be with them, that's a great point. And so that might be one thing that you look for help with. And it may be that, the help is somebody else who gets to be there to be with your husband while you do some of the paperwork and phone tag. Maybe it's somebody you can find to do some of that legwork, the paperwork and phone tag, so you can be with your husband. I know exactly what you mean, though. That's hard. Okay, last one. I want to talk about prioritizing the basics. To function through the day, you need your brain to be as fully charged as it's going to be. And this is super hard with so many things going on and, time constraints. But the three things that you need every day for your brain to work at its best, I call them the big three. And with all of my clients, these are the first three things that people cut as soon as they start to feel busy. But they are really fundamental. You know what they are, you know that you need them, and yet you cut them out. And I'm just going to say them out loud and try to encourage you to put them back in. All right. So the big three that you need to eat in a healthy way, you need to move your body at least a little bit, and you need to sleep. Of these three, the sleep is absolutely the most important. From a cognitive performance, in research studies, students who got adequate sleep and did no different study techniques went up one whole letter grade, right? Just to function, let alone to learn or to grow, sleep is absolutely critical. So you need about 8 hours of sleep, and you want to work desperately to allow that to be possible for yourself. Whatever it takes, whether that needs somebody to help care for your loved one so that you can sleep, or however you work out the sleeping arrangements, but work very hard to try to protect that sleep as much as possible. When it comes to exercise, a 20-minute brisk walk will give you 3/4 of the benefits of an hour of aerobic activity. Really good workout is absolutely wonderful for stress reduction, but even a 20-minute brisk walk will help significantly. So try to prioritize at least that. And then take care of yourself with healthy eating. The last thing that you or your loved one need is for you to succumb because you haven't been taking care of yourself. So try to eat as well as you can, try to get at least that brisk walk in, and really commit to the sleep. There's no magic bullet on this. I know you know it, so I'm not going to overly beat it. But when I work with clients, and for 27 years, I've been teaching people how to be focused and productive at work, there is no strategy for performance and productivity that can come anywhere near these three. These are the most important ones to keep your brain fully in the game. So do your very best with these, and take care of yourself as well as you can as it relates to them. Right. So yes, sleep, yes. Somebody's joking there, or they're saying like, wait, you said to put away the dishes instead of beginning my bedtime routine of reading. And I was just saying, take some type of action. So yeah, sleep is an important one. Other thoughts, questions, ahas on prioritizing the basics? I'll give you guys a minute on that one. So what I want to do is go back to our agenda. And what's interesting to me as a presenter is to know what your takeaway is. What are you going to do differently? So, 50 or so people, I'm really curious to know, what you've done. So I don't need to hear from everybody, but I would love to see if we can fill in on this slide a couple of actions. So if we could come up with a couple of, I am going to take this step in order to reclaim my brain. I am going to take this step to address sorrow, anger, or fatigue. I'm going to take this step to help me cope with all the things I have to manage or to prioritize the basics. So I'd love to hear a couple of those, and also questions. I'm going to be reading from the chat, and some people are answering to everybody. Some are just putting into the host and panelists. One person is asking the question, how do you turn off thoughts to get to sleep? So as I said, I'm going to send a handout about meditation. The meditation I referred to for our purposes is called a simple, silent, secular sit. It's really just a very short practice where you're paying attention to something, and then when your brain gets distracted, you bring it back, and then bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. That's all it is. But there's another type of meditation, which is called metta, which is METTA. So metta meditation uses a phrase that you repeat over and over again. And it's called a meditation on blessings of loving kindness. So it's kind of like prayer, except you're not asking a deity for anything. What you're doing is sending caring thoughts to other people. So you might say, Karen, may she be filled with loving kindness, may she be well, may she be peaceful and at ease, may she be happy. And then you might pick somebody else, and you might say, Cynthia, may she be filled with loving kindness, may she be well, may she be peaceful and at ease, may she be happy. So you have this phrase that you repeat over and over, and you plug people into it. So you picture that person in your mind, and you hold them in your heart, and you say the phrase. So all meditation, because it is practice paying attention, it strengthens the anterior cingulate, that part of your brain that mediates your focus, your attention. But metta also stimulates a part of the brain that's associated with care and compassion for other people. And it turns out that that is also the part of the brain that is responsible for care and compassion for ourselves. So metta is a great sleep aid because it's a practiced meditation, it's a focus. But you just have this phrase, and you keep plugging people into it, and you can picture your loved one with ALS, your family, your neighbors, your caregivers, the person at the grocery store, you know, somebody you went to high school with. You could just keep plugging people in, or you can have a standard set of people. And when you get to the end, if you're not asleep, you just start at the top and keep going. When you get distracted, it's where you come back to. So the challenge when we're trying to go to sleep and there's lots of things going on in our head is, as the person asked the question, how do you turn that off so I can go to sleep? Your brain doesn't turn off. So what you want to do is give your brain somewhere else to go so that it doesn't start stirring up thoughts and emotions that inflame the limbic system. So by practicing metta, you're telling your brain where to go until you fall asleep. And you can say, hey, brain, we're going to do metta until we fall asleep. And so you're doing metta, and then you realize your brain's galloped off about what's for dinner or whether you need to call that insurance. And then you just come back to the metta. So it's giving your brain someplace to go. So that's what I recommend. And when I send the handout on meditation, metta is on that page as well. Okay, so people are saying what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a better bedtime routine. I'm going to get 8 hours sleep. I'm going to learn how to ask for help. And I would just say there, go ahead and practice asking for help. Yeah, this person is recommending keeping an open line of communication with your person and their requirements of comfort also. I'm going to take deep breaths when I'm at a red light. I'm going to implement share the care model and seeking help from neighbors and church members. That's great. I'm going to move my body by going back to morning exercise. I'm going to accept help. I think it's easier to do when one offers specific help. I think that's true, Deborah. But you may now find that you can keep a list of specific things and offer that to people as well. Somebody says, I'm going to start an action list, and would a notebook on the side of bed for all your thoughts to write down help? Yes, as a sleep aid, is that having something where you can take it out of your head and put it on paper. And sometimes I'll have that little piece of paper, draw a little handle on it, like a little suitcase, like the baggage, right? So you take it out of your head, you put it on that paper, and then in the morning you carry that downstairs to your action list and put it there. So you can take it out of your head and pat it on the baggage and be like, shh, okay, brain, we got it. Now we can go to sleep. So you can let that go. All right, so I'm going to see if I can go. Yeah, so I just want to end by saying all of these skills are simple things that you can do. So if you take even one of them, I hope that that will help you in your journey tomorrow. But remember that everything is always changing. Everything is ever flowing, and it's not going to be like it is right now forever. It's just going to be different. But I have confidence that you can get through this. So I'm going to stop there. I know that Lori wants to come back on and say a few words, and then there's a survey. But don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have questions. I'm happy to be of any service that I can to you as you walk this path.
Incredible. Thank you. I think any of us watching can certainly take action after listening to you and your way about being both realistic and positive is incredible. And the people who have joined us today know that you've walked this walk. So, and look at you, you know, you've hung on to your happy place. So we thank you for that. We thank you for your time, for today's presentation, and for still being part of our greater community and helping us. For those who joined us today, I want to remind you that this presentation is going to live on our website. It'll be up in a couple of days. And I encourage you to revisit it when you're thinking about, gosh, I heard that there are better ways to sleep, but I've forgotten what they are. Revisit this presentation and share it with others who really could benefit from it. The other thing I want to remind you is also that also living on our website is the Care Connections program. A number of you talked about you want to get better about asking for help. I think Richard mentioned a program that he knows that he can enlist people within your village. Care Connections is a pretty simple online tool where people who want to be able to help can access, and I'm going to make a recommendation. Find a really trustworthy loved one to manage the Care Connections tool for you. Caregivers, I don't want you to take on yet another project. What you can do is take that to-do list, identify the things that someone else could help with, have the Care Connections coordinator line up people who want to help with tasks that they can do. Just a couple of the ideas that live on our website. So thank you, Porter, so much for joining us. I want to remind folks that we do have a very brief 3-question survey to complete if you'll hang on after we wrap up. So in closing, thanks everybody for joining us today. Enjoy your holidays, and we'll see you next year.